Sean Kelly from the Love at Loch Ness. Step 1 on what you need, the basics for making sourdough.
Okay, so this is what we need to make a basic sourdough. So we need obviously some flour, a jug for your water, a spatula, another mixing bowl, some electronic scales, some parchment paper. Really important, we need some rice flour, a proving basket, we need a jar with an elastic band, a razor blade or a very, very sharp knife, and your starter.
So, step 2, building a leaven.
So to make the sourdough, we need to start by making a leaven, which is basically taking your starter, adding some flour and adding some water. So for one loaf for this size, for 500 grams, we're going to take 20 grams of the starter. Look at that, spot on, 20 grams. And then we're going to add 40 grams of water. ,40 grams of flour.
What kind of flour?
Well, this is a mix of white flour and wholemeal flour.
Equal mix?
No, I've got 10% wholemeal. So that's 40 grams. Just going to mix this together, and then we're going to put that in the jar with the elastic band. Then with the elastic band, if we just mark whereabouts the leaven comes up to, and then we want that to expand by about 3 or 4 times. So we just need to put that somewhere warm, around about 25, 26 degrees, and that will take around about 4 hours, 4.5 hours to come up.
Step 3, autolyse.
So to make the autolyse, we've got 275 grams of white flour here and 20 grams of wholemeal flour. Now instead of the wholemeal flour, you could just use all white, you could use rye or spelt, it doesn't really matter too much, but this is what I use in my basic sourdough. And then we've got 225 grams of water. Now all we need to do is just mix the two together, it just needs to be mixed, that's it, no kneading or anything else. Then we cover it, put it in somewhere warm between sort of 24, 28 degrees, and we'll leave that for around about the same time as the leaven that we made earlier. So you just need to mix it until the flour has absorbed all of the liquid. So that's it just needs to be mixed together, that's it, nothing else. Now I'm just going to transfer that to a clean bowl. And that's it. And then we're going to cover it with a shower cap. And then for me to keep this 25 degrees, we have a little proving box over here. And we're just going to pop that in. Leave that for about 4 or 5 hours as well.
Step 4, bulk fermentation.
So bulk fermentation is where we add the leaven that we've made earlier to the autolyse flour. So we're going to, for this particular recipe, we're going to use 65 grams of the leaven. And you can see that, so that's risen about 3 or 4 times its original volume. So we take 65 grams of that. We're going to add that to water-leased flour. We're going to give it 30 minutes and then we're going to add the salt. So 65 grams. 65 grams, perfect. And if you go a little bit over, if it's 67, 68, it doesn't really matter too much. Then to mix that in, I'm just going to wet my fingers and then we just start mixing that in. And that should just take a couple of minutes to mix that in. Okay, so that's it. And that's that. So back on with the shower cap. Back into your warm spot.
Step 5, adding the salt.
So that's the 30 minutes gone. We're just going to add 7 grams of salt to it. And then just mix all that through. That should just take a minute or two. So once all the salt's mixed in, you shouldn't feel any grains in the dough. It should feel nice and smooth. And then at that point we'll cover it, put it back into its hot spot, and we'll give it 45 minutes before we stretch and fold it.
Step 6, stretch and fold.
Stretch and fold.
Not yoga.
So after 45 minutes, we move on to the really easy bit. All the hard work's been done, and we're just going to stretch and fold the dough. And that's to make the dough really strong and elastic. And as the dough is really sticky, all we need to do is just wet our hands. And I'm not sure if you're going to see that, but just pull the dough, pull it up and just plop it back down. Turn it around 180 degrees, do the same thing. And then the opposite sides. And that's it, and then we put it away for another 45 minutes and we do the same thing again.
Step 7, coil fold. So
after the second stretch and fold, then after that we'll do a coil fold, which is really simple. Again, you just need some wet fingers. Pick it up, put your fingers in and just stretch, just let it fall back on itself. And it coils around itself, and then turn it 180 degrees, do the same thing on the opposite side, and turn it again. Just lift it up and let the dough fall underneath it, and then that's it. And then we're just going to put that back somewhere warm for another 45 minutes, and then we'll do that a second time before we start shaping the bread.
Step 7, lamination.
After the second fold, we're going to just do what's called a lamination, and that's just basically stretching out the dough thin on the table. Again, wet your hands, and the whole idea is stretch from the middle and pull it out, and the whole idea strengthen the dough. And also, if you want to make a sourdough with some seeds or some nuts or something like that, then what we would do is just sprinkle some of them over the top and then roll it up. So once it's been pulled out and stretched, it's nice and thin, then all we need to do is just put it back onto itself. Like this, and then just carry on folding it and then lift it up. And then we pop that back into the bowl somewhere nice and warm, and we give it another 45 minutes.
Step 8, Preshape.
After the second coil fold, we're just going to, again, wet our hands. We're going to lift the dough gently out of the bowl. To give it a pre-shape. So with a scraper, all you need to do is just wet the scraper a little bit and then just get the scraper underneath the dough and turn it around on itself. And this is just to try and tighten up the outside of the dough a little bit before we give it a final shape. We're going to leave it on the table for 20 minutes, just like that, and you can cover that back over with the bowl. Just to let it rest a little bit, 20 minutes, and then we'll give it a final shape, and then into the basket.
Nearly finished. Step 9, final shape.
So after 11 hours, we are almost there. It's dark outside, I'm tired, well enough. Right, okay, so the final shape, the rice flour that I said right at the very beginning, that's really important. Now this is really important to use rice flour to dust in the basket and also to dust on the dough. If we just use normal flour, it will stick to the basket and we'll just have a nightmare when we come to cook it. So a little bit of flour, and then we just give it a little scrape just to bring it back into a little bit of a ball. Right, okay, so we've got a little ball. Dust it with a little bit more flour and lift it upside down. Now this side's going to be sticky, which is what we want, because that's going to hold it all together. So we're just going to bring the front about 2/3 of the way over, two sides into the middle. Just push it down a little bit so it sticks. Same with the other side. And then as we just pull it right over, all the way over, turn it onto itself, back onto itself, pull the two ends over, a little bit more flour, and then we can just shape it into a bit of a tighter ball. And that's it, and then we just pop it into our basket. We're going to put the shower cap back on, and then we're going to leave it another 20 or 25 minutes to finish proving somewhere warm, and then after that into the fridge overnight. Leave it for about 12 hours. The longer we leave it, the more sour it will become. So tomorrow we're going to cook it in the oven at a hot temperature, about 250 degrees, for about 40 minutes in total. And then we'll see the result tomorrow.
Step 10, Dutch oven.
Right, so that's 12 hours up. What we're going to do now is just take it out of the fridge. We're going to score it, and it's important that we score it, whether we put one mark on it or several marks on it. If we don't score it, what will happen is it will just pop out at the weakest point in the dough, and it won't look very nice at all. When I'm cooking it, I always cook it in a Dutch oven, and the reason for that is because it keeps the steam inside, and you need a lot of steam inside or around your dough to give your dough a nice colour and a nice crust. So the Dutch oven has been in the oven at 240 for an hour, so it's been preheated for an hour to keep its temperature. Then we're going to pop it back into the oven for 20 minutes at 240, and after that 20 minutes we're going to turn it down to 200 and give it another 20 minutes. So, here's the dough. I'm just going to pop that on the parchment paper. I'm just going to dust it with a little bit of rice flour. Just gently rub a little bit on. And with a razor blade, just going to give it a few cuts all the way over just to give it a nice little pattern. Okay, then gently lift that into the Dutch oven. You can get the lid on the top. Okay, 20 minutes.
Step 10, Dutch oven after 20 minutes.
So after 20 minutes, drop the oven temperature to 180, take the lid off of the Dutch oven and then pop it back in for 20 minutes.
Step 11, have a rest.
So that's the sourdough out the oven. Oh, that just smells amazing. Now the thing for me is, as soon as it comes out of the oven, I really just want to cut into it and eat it because it just smells so good. But you want to leave it for at least 2 hours before you cut it. Otherwise, if you cut it straight away, you're just going to have loads of dough inside. It's going to carry on cooking internally for at least another 30 minutes.
Step 12, the crumb, final stage.
So both my breads have now been out of the oven for a few hours, and one of the lovely characteristics of sourdough is that the crumb inside, if we've done this right, will be nice, open and uneven. So let's take a look. So there's one. Let's have a look at the other one. All we need now is a little bit of butter or some cheese, or both.